Before we begin, I want you to keep an open mind. The story you're about to hear was shared by someone who claims these events happened to them when they were just 13 years old. It starts with an innocent sleepover inside a house with a horrifying past, but after one night with a Ouija board, the terror doesn't stay inside those walls. Was it grief? Was it imagination? Or did something truly attach itself to them that night? As always, I'll let you decide. If you enjoy true horror stories, paranormal encounters, and unexplained mysteries. Make sure to subscribe to Haunted Encounters and don't forget to like the video if you want to see more stories like this. Now turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and let's begin. There are some places that just don't feel right. You know the kind of place I'm talking about. The moment you step inside, the air feels heavier, the silence feels unnatural, and you can't shake the feeling that someone is watching you. This story begins at the house of one of my childhood friends. We'll call her Bella. Now, before I tell you what happened there, you need to understand the history of that house. Back in the late 1960s, something horrific happened within those walls. One night, a husband came home unexpectedly and found his wife in bed with another man. Without hesitation, he pulled out a gun. He shot his wife. He shot the man she was with, and then he turned the gun on himself. The murder suicide happened in what would later become Bella's older sister's bedroom. Years passed. Eventually, Bella's parents bought the property, completely unaware of what had happened there. It wasn't until they began renovating the house that they stumbled across an old newspaper article documenting the murders. Imagine finding out after you've already moved in that your family is living in a house where three people died so violently. Most people would have left, Bella's family stayed, and that wasn't the only unsettling discovery they made. About 10 years later, during another round of renovations, they pulled back the carpet in that same bedroom underneath it. They found three enormous black stains that had seeped through the carpet and into the original hardwood floor. No matter how many years had passed, those stains had never truly disappeared. Everyone assumed they were old bloodstains. Instead of replacing the flooring, they simply sanded it down, applied a fresh finish, laid a large area rug over the stains, and called it good enough, as if covering the past somehow erased it. But the house never let anyone forget. Things would disappear without explanation, only to turn up days later in places everyone had already searched. Kitchen cabinets and drawers would suddenly be wide open, even though no one had touched them. Doors slammed shut on their own. People swore they'd seen family members walking through the house, only to realize the real person had been somewhere else the entire time. Doppelgangers, shadowy figures, unexplained noises. Honestly, if someone had told me all of that before I ever stepped inside, I probably would have refused to go. But when you're 13 years old, ghost stories feel exciting, danger feels imaginary. You convince yourself nothing bad could ever happen to you. Looking back now, I wish I had listened to the feeling in my gut because that night everything changed. I was 13 years old. Bella and I were sitting cross legged on the floor of her bedroom. The lights were off. The only thing illuminating the room was a single candle flickering between us, throwing long, dancing shadows across the walls, and resting on the floor was a Ouija board. At that age, everything creepy feels exciting. Ghost stories, haunted houses, seances. It all seemed more thrilling than dangerous. We thought we were just having fun. Looking back now, I don't think we had the slightest idea what we were inviting into that room. At the time, I was still grieving the loss of my father. He had passed away from cancer just a few years earlier, and if I'm being honest, I wasn't handling it well. I missed him every single day. I was angry that he'd left us, angry that cancer had stolen him away. There was this huge empty space in my life that nothing seemed to fill. So when we sat down with that board, part of me wasn't thinking about ghosts. I was thinking about him. I was desperate to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to talk to my dad one last time. That desperation made me vulnerable, probably more vulnerable than I realized. Before my dad died, I had never been interested in the supernatural. Sure, I believed in God. My family went to church. I prayed every night. Honestly, I was the kind of kid who even prayed for other people's pets. I was incredibly sensitive. I avoided horror movies because they'd give me nightmares for weeks. Anything remotely paranormal scared me. So, sitting there, in a supposedly haunted house with a Ouija board between us. It should have felt wrong, but grief has a way of making you ignore every warning sign. Bella and I rested our fingertips lightly on the planchette. The room was completely silent. Even the candle flame barely moved. Bella looked at me. I looked back at her. Then together we whispered, "Hello? Are there any spirits here who would like to speak with us?" For a moment, nothing happened. The room stayed perfectly still. Then, very slowly, the planchette began to move. At first, I thought Bella was pushing it. She later swore she thought I was the one moving it. Neither of us admitted to doing it, yet somehow it kept gliding across the board. Our first questions were exactly what you'd expect from two 13-year-old girls. Silly things. Questions about boys, about the future, about whether we'd become famous someday. The answers came quickly, sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes maybe. It all felt almost harmless until the questions changed. Bella looked at me. I took a deep breath. Then I asked, "Is someone here with us?" The planchette slid across the board. Yes. I swallowed hard. The room suddenly felt colder. I asked another question. "Are you a good spirit?" This time it paused for several long seconds. Then it moved again. Maybe. I remember staring at that word. Maybe. Not yes, not no, maybe. Something about that answer made my stomach twist. But instead of stopping, I kept going. I couldn't help myself. My voice barely rose above a whisper. "Are you my dad?" The planchette moved almost immediately. No, that single word hit harder than I expected for a second. I just sat there staring at the board. Then I asked one more question. "Do you know my dad?" "Yes." I felt tears beginning to well in my eyes. My heart was pounding. I leaned closer. "Is he okay?" "Yes." "Is he in heaven again?" "Yes." For just a brief moment. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe my father was reaching out somehow, but almost instantly something changed. The atmosphere in that room shifted. It wasn't gradual, it was immediate. Every instinct I had suddenly screamed that something was terribly, terribly wrong. The air felt impossibly heavy. My skin prickled. The tiny hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. You know that feeling when you suddenly become convinced someone is standing behind you, watching you, even though you haven't heard a single sound? It was exactly like that, only much worse. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't just fear, it felt dark. Not the absence of light, but the presence of something that shouldn't have been there. And then I heard it. A slow, heavy creak. Bella's bed, the mattress compressed with the unmistakable sound of someone sitting down on the edge of it. Very slowly, I turned my head at first. I didn't understand what I was looking at, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw it. There was an outline, the shape of someone sitting perfectly still on the edge of Bella's bed. No face, no details, just a darker shadow against an already dark room. I couldn't move. I just stared, trying to convince myself I was imagining it, trying to make sense of something that made absolutely no sense. Seconds felt like minutes, minutes felt like hours. Then something inside me snapped. Oh, hell no. I lunged over Bella, scrambled across the room as fast as I could, and slammed my hand against the light switch. The room exploded with light. The shadow was gone. The bed was empty. I didn't care. I refused to touch that board ever again. I didn't care what Bella wanted to do. I didn't care if she thought I was overreacting. I just wanted out of that room, out of that house, anywhere but there. Looking back now, there's one detail that still haunts me more than anything else. We never closed the session, we never said goodbye, we never ended it. At 13 years old, we had no idea that people believed you were supposed to close a VJ session before walking away. We simply abandoned the board and left for years. I thought that was just a stupid mistake made by two scared kids. Now, I'm not so sure, because sometimes I wonder if something left that room with me. A few months passed after that night at Bella's house. I tried my best to move on. I told myself that maybe grief had gotten the better of me. Maybe I had imagined the figure on the bed. Maybe the gunshot had been part of a dream. Maybe. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Then another sleepover happened. This time it was at the house of two other childhood friends. I'll call them Kit and Kat. Unlike Bella, whose house had a dark history, Kit had always been known as the one who was sensitive. She'd casually talk about seeing people that no one else could see. She'd mention hearing voices or catching glimpses of figures walking through the house. The strange part was how normal she made it sound. As kids, we never really questioned it. We just accepted that Kit saw things the rest of us didn't. That night, the three of us got ready for bed. Their bed was only big enough for two people, so I volunteered to sleep on an air mattress on the floor. It didn't bother me, at least not at first. We talked for a while, laughed about school, told stupid stories, and eventually turned out the lights. The room fell into darkness almost immediately. I regretted sleeping on the floor. As I lay there staring into the darkness, I heard it very faint at first, a low guttural cackling right next to my ear. I froze. It wasn't loud. If anything, it sounded almost amused, like someone was quietly laughing to themselves. The sound was so close that I could have sworn whoever was making it was lying beside me. Face just inches from mine, every muscle in my body locked up. I didn't dare move. I kept telling myself it had to be the house settling. Maybe someone outside, anything. The cackling continued, soft, steady, impossible to ignore. That same feeling of dread I'd experienced at Bella's house washed over me all over again. The air felt heavy, my stomach tightened. I couldn't take it anymore. I whispered as loudly as I could without shouting, Kit, Cat, can I please get up there with you? They both stirred awake. I tried explaining what I'd heard, but the words barely made sense. All I knew was that I didn't want to stay on that air mattress for another second. Thankfully, they made room for me. I squeezed into the middle of the bed between them. Almost immediately, I felt safer. Not safe, just safer. Eventually, my breathing slowed. I started thinking maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe now I'd finally be able to fall asleep. I rolled onto my side facing the bedroom wall. Behind me on the nightstand sat a digital alarm clock. Its soft blue light was the only thing illuminating the room. I stared at that pale glow for what felt like forever. Then something moved. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. A shadow drifted across the wall, slowly, smoothly, then it stopped. My breath caught in my throat. It was a hand. Not a vague shape, not something I imagined into existence. A hand, large, perfectly defined. I could clearly make out every finger, all five of them. It hovered in the blue light, then slowly it began to wave back and forth, like someone silently saying hello. My heart dropped. I remember thinking, this can't be happening. Maybe I'm losing my mind. I slowly glanced behind me. Neither Kit nor Cat had moved. Neither of them had a hand raised. Neither of them was anywhere near the light source. My entire body started trembling. Very carefully, I nudged them both. Without saying a word, I pointed toward the wall. They looked and immediately froze. Neither of them laughed. Neither of them tried explaining it away. They saw it too. The room fell completely silent. The hand disappeared. But somehow, that felt worse because now we all knew we'd seen it. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, Kate broke the silence. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't want to say anything earlier, she paused. But there's someone sitting in the corner of the room. Every ounce of warmth left my body. What do you mean, someone? She kept staring toward the corner. I've been seeing them all night. I turned to look. There was nothing there, at least nothing that my eyes could see. But after everything that had already happened, I wasn't about to tell her she was imagining it. Fear settled over all three of us. The room suddenly felt much smaller. I remember silently praying, not for proof, not for answers, just for whatever was there, to leave us alone. But another thought kept creeping into my mind. A dangerous one. What if? What if it was my dad? I wanted that to be true more than anything, but another voice inside me kept pushing back. If it really was your father, why are you this afraid? That question echoed in my mind over and over, because deep down I already knew the answer. Whatever was in that room, it didn't feel familiar, it didn't feel comforting, it didn't feel like love, it felt wrong. Then something happened that I still struggle to explain. Kate slowly reached over and whispered a nickname. Not my real name, not the name everyone at school used. It was the nickname my dad had given me when I was little. A name no one else knew. I stared at her. I don't remember even breathing. How do you know that? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for my hand. Our fingers intertwined. Kit was tiny. She'd always had delicate hands and almost no upper body strength. But the moment she grabbed my hand, Everything changed. The grip tightened, hard, much harder than should have been possible. Her hand didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt large, rough, strong, exactly like my father's hand. The same calluses, the same pressure, the same unmistakable feeling I remembered from childhood. For one impossible moment, it felt like my dad was holding my hand again. I completely broke down. I sobbed, partly because I missed him more than words could ever describe, and partly because every instinct in my body was screaming, "This isn't him." The grief, the fear, the pressure in that room. It became unbearable. None of us could take it anymore. Someone finally reached over and switched on the lights. The spell was broken, at least for a little while. We stayed awake talking for hours, trying to make sense of everything we'd just experienced. Every explanation sounded ridiculous. Every possibility sounded worse. Eventually, Kit got up to use the bathroom, leaving Kat and me alone in the room. For the first time all night, things were quiet. Then, crash. A string of decorative beads hanging from the window frame suddenly fell to the floor. Kat and I screamed so loudly that we nearly fell off the bed. Our nerves were completely shot. Almost at that exact moment, Kit came running back into the room. She looked pale, absolutely terrified. "What happened?" we asked. She could barely get the words out. I looked in the bathroom mirror. She swallowed hard, and my face wasn't my face. She told us her reflection looked horribly sick. Her cheeks had sunk inward, her skin looked grey, her eyes looked hollow. She said she looked like someone dying of cancer. Then, right in front of her, she watched a large orange orb rise out of her head. As it floated away, her reflection slowly returned to normal. She looked like herself again. None of us knew what to say. The room fell silent. Eventually, Kit and Kat managed to fall asleep. I didn't. I lay there wide awake, watching the darkness slowly fade, waiting for the first rays of sunlight to creep through the window. I've never been so relieved to see the morning because after everything that happened that night, I wasn't sure I'd ever feel safe in the dark again. The next morning, I went home exhausted. I hadn't slept. My mind kept replaying everything that had happened the night before: the cackling beside the air mattress, the shadow hand waving across the wall, Kit whispering the nickname that only my father had ever called me, the crushing grip of a hand that somehow didn't feel like hers, and that orange orb floating out of her reflection in the bathroom mirror. None of it made sense. The more I thought about it, the less I could convince myself that it had all been my imagination. As soon as I got home, my mom could tell something was wrong. She took one look at me and asked what happened. I told her everything, every single detail. She listened quietly, never interrupting me. When I finally finished, she didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't tell me I had imagined it. Instead, she asked me one question: "Did you use a Ouija board?" The moment she said those words, my stomach dropped. I hesitated, then quietly admitted, "Yeah." I told her about Bella's house, about the candle, the questions, the figure sitting on the bed, and how we'd run away without ever saying goodbye. For the first time during the entire conversation, my mom looked genuinely frightened. She told me never ever use a Ouija board again, not as a joke, not out of curiosity, not for any reason. She explained that in her belief, those boards could open doors that people didn't fully understand, and sometimes those doors weren't easy to close. Then she said something that has stayed with me ever since. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Whatever spoke to you that night, it wasn't your father." I didn't want to hear that. Part of me still desperately wanted to believe my dad had somehow found a way to reach me, but my mom shook her head. She believed something had seen my grief, seen how badly I wanted to hear my father's voice again, and it had used that against me. "It was pretending," she said softly. "That's why you felt afraid." Those words hit me harder than anything else, because deep down I'd already been asking myself the same question. If it had really been my dad, why had I felt nothing but terror? Why hadn't I felt safe? Why hadn't I felt loved instead? Every instinct I'd had was screaming for me to run. My mom believed that fear was the answer. Whatever I'd encountered, it wasn't someone I knew. It was something wearing a familiar face, or at least trying to. After that conversation, things only got worse. The nights became unbearable. Sleep stopped feeling like rest. It became something I dreaded. Almost every night I'd wake from terrifying nightmares that felt far too real. Sometimes I couldn't remember what I'd dreamed. I only remembered the overwhelming feeling that something had been in the room with me. Watching, waiting. Some nights I'd wake up soaked in sweat. Other nights I'd refuse to close my eyes at all. Eventually, I became terrified of my own bedroom, especially after dark. The mirror was the worst part. Every time I walked past it, I had this overwhelming fear that if I looked too long, someone else would be standing behind me. I started avoiding it completely. I'd rush past without making eye contact, even during the daytime. At night, being alone became impossible. Every shadow looked wrong, every tiny sound made my heart race. I'd lie awake listening to every creak the house made, convinced something was just outside my bedroom door or already inside. It got so bad that I couldn't sleep alone anymore. Night after night, I'd climb into bed beside my mom. I kept expecting her to tell me I was too old to send me back to my own room. She never did, not once. She simply let me stay. Looking back, I'm incredibly grateful for that because at the time, it felt like she was the only place where I was safe. This went on for years, long enough that fear became part of my daily life. Every evening, I'd start feeling anxious as the sun went down. Not because I was tired, but because I knew bedtime was getting closer, and bedtime meant facing whatever waited for me in the dark. Eventually, my mom decided something had to change. One afternoon, she walked into my room carrying a small bottle of anointed oil. She quietly prayed as she went from corner to corner, blessing the room. She anointed the doorways, the windows, the walls. She asked for peace, for protection, for whatever had been tormenting me to leave. Then she completely transformed the room. We rearranged the furniture, changed the decorations, made it feel like an entirely different space. The biggest change was the mirror. Built into my bedroom was an old vanity with a large mirror. Even after everything else changed, I still couldn't stand looking at it. So we covered it with curtains unless I absolutely needed to use it. The mirror stayed hidden, oddly enough. Things slowly began to improve. The nightmares became less frequent. The crushing fear started to fade. I could finally sleep in my own room again. It wasn't immediate, it took time, but little by little life started feeling normal, or at least as normal as it could after everything I'd experienced. The anxiety never disappeared completely. It just became quieter. Something I learned to live with. Years passed. I grew up, built a life, moved on, at least on the surface, but even now, as an adult, there are moments when I catch myself remembering those nights. And I still can't answer the question that's haunted me for nearly 2 decades. Did we really open a door that night? Or did something simply see an opportunity and decide to walk through it? If this story kept you on edge, don't let the fear end here. There are many more true inspired horror stories, haunted legends, and terrifying encounters waiting for you on this channel. Every week, a new nightmare unfolds, and trust me, the next one might be even more disturbing than the one you just heard. If you're new to Haunted Encounters, welcome. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another chilling tale. And if you've been with us for a while, thank you for being part of this growing community. Your support keeps these stories alive, and we are just getting started. Before you go, tell me in the comments what would you have done if you were in that situation. I read your comments, and some of your experiences are just as terrifying as the stories themselves. Until next time, keep the lights on, lock your doors, and remember some encounters are never truly over.